Hello everyone, welcome to another video discussion. This time I shall be talking about the different communication strategies that we can use in transmitting and absorbing information through a stimulating and meaningful manner. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a discussion which will be focused in different means of communication. Well, we all know that with the advent or the birth of technology, various forms or means of technology or various forms and means of communication have been made. And this has made our communication with other people, not only within our community, but also coming from different parts of the globe, become easier and more convenient for most of us. And that is why it is very important that we talk about the different communication strategies so that as communicators, we would also know the different ways on how we could communicate effectively with the people around us. Before we proceed to the formal discussion, let us first acquaint ourselves with the different definitions and natures of communication strategies. Communication strategies refer to the techniques of conveying a message. Well, obviously, when we talk about the different strategies used in communication, they refer to any form or technique that we use to convey information or message towards other people effectively. Communication strategies pertain to the methods which smoothen the sending and receiving of the message, because that is our primary goal, to be understood by the person or people who will be receiving our messages. Communication strategies also allow a free flow of information where better understanding happens. And these strategies are employed to assist the speaker in sending his messages and help the receivers in processing the information quickly. And lastly, communication strategies resemble a fact-filled and fun-laced presentation of data. Well, definitely the way we communicate should be appropriate so that we could also accurately relay the message towards the intended receiver. Okay, and then another term that we will be encountering in this video discussion is audiovisual aids. They are learning devices which assist in clarifying, establishing, correlating, coordinating, interpreting, and appreciating concepts. So these may include illustrations, pictures, charts, graphs, and film clips that may be utilized in relaying information. And of course, all of us are very familiar with PowerPoint presentations. PowerPoint presentation is a technological device that has been widely used to relay messages through slides, bullets, tables, images, illustrations, links, and videos. And we are aware that PowerPoint presentations are used not only for academic purposes, but also for professional contexts. And we also have web-based applications. As mentioned a while ago, the birth of technology has introduced us to various means of communication, and web-based applications are one of them. These comprise any program which is retrieved through a network connection using HTTP. Through this connection, one may access light applications such as flash games, online calculators, calendars, and other applications available online. So, in order for us to be acquainted with the different media of communication, let us talk first about audiovisual aids. Well, in the educational or academic context, we are pretty much acquainted with this medium of communication. Audiovisual aids. So, what do you prefer more in learning? Is it through in person teaching, or how about seeing texts, images, and videos? I don't know if you have noticed this one, but when you go to a bookshop or bookstore and look for a potential book that you might want to buy, oftentimes you scan not only the blurbs of the books, but also the contents of the books. You look for interesting things about the books, and one of these things that you might be considering looking at is the layout, okay, or the aesthetics of the book. Because sometimes we get invited reading the book when we see that this book has a pretty aesthetics that could really invite us to read not only the first chapter of the book, but also the rest of the chapters and consequently finish reading the entire book. So In the context of disseminating information, audiovisual aids are pretty much helpful in making sure that we sustain the interest of our audience. So what do these instructional methods appeal to you? Okay, learners may differ from learning styles due to individual preferences, and are aware that there are those people who are plainly linguistic, and so they would love to see text or words only. But there are also some learners who are visual in nature who would love to see pictures and other images that could, you know, be appealing to their eyes and could sustain their attention or interest in the visual aid itself. So everybody has choices on how to take, process, and impart information. Some may have the likelihood to grasp info when presented orally, whereas others may learn better when the information is presented through images. That's according to Smith in 2019. Now, how do we activate our audio and visual senses? Because sometimes we would want to read texts only, plain texts only. And so we would disregard images or the aesthetics, the layout of the pages or the visual aids. But mind you, sometimes these things would really make us sustain our attention in reading or listening to the message being relayed to us. Audiovisual aids are considered as instructional materials that help learners to understand the topic easily. Well, it has made learning more, or it has made learning easier because it's a combination of two modes. So we have the audio one and the visual one. And once we combine these two, we create an audiovisual material that can also steer the interest of your readers or listeners. Through hearing or audio and seeing or visual, knowledge is made clear with the help of these senses. Audio aids are devices that can be heard only. Meanwhile, visual aids are materials that help to envision the meaning. So with these concepts, audiovisual aids transform a learning environment as meaningful as possible through learning and seeing. And you know what? Audiovisual aids are also interactive in a way because they allow you to interact with the text through the sense of hearing and seeing. Therefore, any material which can be utilized to create learning encounter more realistic and engaging can be considered an audiovisual material. That's according to Instructional Technology 3, 2011. Similarly, audiovisual aids are learning devices which assist in clarifying, establishing, correlating, coordinating, interpreting, and appreciating concepts. Why is it so? Because if it is purely visual, then you can see the text only, but you might not be able to fully understand the meaning of the text. But once it is backed up by an audio material, then the discussion, which could be in a form of an audio material, could aid or corroborate in helping the relaying of messages more easily towards the audience. And so, understanding or comprehension becomes easier as well. In doing so, illustrations, pictures, charts, graphs, and film clips may be utilized so that so as to inject not only creativity but also efficiency in terms of comprehension. Few examples of these audiovisual aids are we have PowerPoint presentations that we use not only in class but also in professional setups. And we also have web-based applications, blogging, and the trend, which is vlogging. And we also have the use of multimodal texts. Eventually, these learning materials enable the learner to absorb the information in a more inspiring, interesting, and meaningful manner. As mentioned, one of the effective tools that we can use in terms of audiovisual aids is the PowerPoint presentation. I know for most of you, you have been accustomed already to how PowerPoint presentations are made. And I think most of us already have an access to this application, the PowerPoint presentation. Most individuals, as mentioned, are already familiar with this one, be it in education or career, and this technological device has been widely used to relay messages through slides, or if you want to summarize concepts, bullets. We also have tables, images, illustrations, links, and videos. Through these learning sessions, board-level presentations, business meetings, or any occurrence may transform into fact-filled and fun-laced encounters. Try to imagine a speaker plainly delivering his or her report in front orally without any visual or audiovisual aid. I think it might appear or sound boring on the end of the listeners. So, if you want to make a twist with how things should go during your presentation or your reporting, then you can use PowerPoint presentation to make your presentation livelier and more interesting. Considering the advantages which PowerPoint offers, people in the academe, business, and industry are encouraged to delve into the utilization of this technological advancement. It's true because it's readily accessible for everyone. Through this, cost-effective and captivating presentations pave the way for engaging content for learners, customers, and investors alike. In the lens of Castigador in 2019, the following are helpful tips in preparing a PowerPoint presentation. Well, for students, I know that you have made PowerPoint presentations several times already. But based on my experiences in a classroom setting, there have been countless times when students, I believe, do not really have an idea on how to properly make a PowerPoint presentation. Sometimes our idea is that when creating PowerPoint presentations, we try to be as innovative or creative as possible so that we could capture the attention of our audience. And this sometimes compromises the quality of our PowerPoint presentations. In our eyes, our PowerPoint presentations might look appealing already, but on the end of our audiences, our presentation might look it's something that will not really catch their attention or something that will not sustain their focus all throughout your presentation. So it's good that we be reminded with these tips presented by Castigador in 2019. First one is that we need to consider the time and venue. The time and venue of the presentation must be taken into consideration at all times. These concerns also include the lighting, which will positively or negatively affect the presentation. So whenever you are in an open area, LCD or LED projector is not appropriate. In that case, a chart or other visual aids may do. And we need to be very careful because if there is too much light entering the room or the venue, then you are not allowed to use a background with light color because perhaps the audience members, most especially those seated at the back portion of the room or the venue, might not be able to clearly see the texts flashed on the screen. Also, if the room is too dark, then that means we should also avoid using dark background for our PowerPoint presentations. Okay? So the time and the venue are also essential things to know when preparing for a PowerPoint presentation. Another thing that we need to consider is the audience. The demographic profile of the audience is also a factor to consider. This may comprise the number, profile, age, norms, and culture. Likewise, using the crowd's common language suggests an advantage to gain attention. So one thing that we need to remember also in order for us to effectively communicate towards our audience is that we should consider at all times the background of our audience members. For example, we could not use childlike or childish background or other insertions in our PowerPoint presentations if our audience members are composed of professionals or adults. And like in the same manner, we could not use also highly formal texts for if our participants are, let's say, elementary or high school students, right? So you always need to consider the audience as well. And of course, we also need to consider the cultural background of the audience, most especially when using, let's say, background for our PowerPoint presentations, because for us, it might appear like we are appreciating their culture by using, let's say, a tribal pattern as part of our background, but it might appear as cultural appropriation on their end. So we also need to consider and rethink about using such backgrounds for our PowerPoint presentations. The third thing that we need to consider are the preferences of our audience. The listeners' likes and dislikes too must be looked into. Aside from that, it must be noted that anything offensive to the listeners must be avoided at all times, of course. As the young audience, they may prefer colorful and cartoon-like materials unlike adult listeners. So Same as what I mentioned a while ago, always consider your audience's preferences. We also need to consider the purpose of why we use such things or insertions in our PowerPoint presentation. The presentation must be guided by a clear purpose. The planning and the preparation of the whole thing should be aligned in this purpose, along with the audience, location, and time of the presentation. In doing so, drafting is the first step to warrant appropriate sequencing of ideas. After drafting by means of sketching the framework, one can start working on the PowerPoint presentation. You also need to consider whether the PowerPoint presentation is of academic or professional purpose. If it is academic, then that means you need to consider the audience that you will have, let's say students or teachers. But if it is for professional purposes, let's say you are to present something in front of the executive board or the school administration or the management, that means they would not want to see PowerPoint slides crowded with texts. They want to see charts and other non-prose materials which could support your presentation or your discussion. Because through these graphics, it's easier for them to look into the details or the data being presented. So you need to know also the purpose of why you are presenting that PowerPoint. And of course, always do consider the insertions. These refer to the pictures, graphics, videos, graphs, tables, and charts to be inserted in the PowerPoint slides. I could remember one time when I had an acquaintance who used colorful background. As a matter of fact, it was pink. And there were a lot of insertions to include such as butterflies. Then I could remember there were glowing or sparkling flowers all over the side of the PowerPoint presentation or the slides. And then the texts were just too colorful and bright. And the nature, the purpose for that PowerPoint presentation is academic. And I believe that it was inappropriate to use such insertions given the nature and the purpose for that PowerPoint presentation. So when we use insertions, make sure that everything that you insert in your PowerPoint presentation is relevant. Yes, they should be relevant. And at the same time, they should help the audience in understanding the content of your PowerPoint slides. Okay? Aside from that, you also need to consider the texts. The size and font of the texts must be visible enough that even the last person occupying the venue can see, most especially those who are seated at the back portion of the room or the venue. Depending on the number of listeners, the text must be suitable or readable. So ideally, in a PowerPoint presentation, you use font size 18 or larger. We don't use font size 12 because it's just too tiny to be seen by all audience members within a venue or within a room. However, if you are doing a virtual presentation such as this, you can actually use size 12 or perhaps size 14. Avoid using larger font styles or font sizes because the members are definitely present online or virtually, and so they can see it from their screens. Another thing that you need to consider is the design or the layout of your PowerPoint presentation. The design of the PowerPoint presentation must help the viewers understand important concepts or details. The number of bullets must be limited to 5 to 7 lines only. That's why we need to avoid overcrowding our slides with a lot of texts. Anchored on the 555 principles, there must be 5 lines per frame only or per slide. There should be 5 lines only, and then 5 words per line only, and 5 frames of text. In that case, crowded and heavy slides are avoided. However, there are times when we really could not follow the 555 principle because we need to incorporate or integrate a lot of information into our slides. And so we could not follow really the 5 lines per frame. It's okay. As long as we know how to manage the crowded slides, we know how to make sure that the slides are not really that crowded by minimizing the texts or by inserting graphics instead. Similarly, important details must be summarized so that phrases in bullet points and compact details are presented in each slide. What's ideal is that we don't put everything, the entire paragraph, into our PowerPoint slides. Ideally, we choose only keywords or key phrases that would help us be guided during our presentation. The more text that we put, the more risk that we give towards our listeners, and the more risk that we give towards our presentation. Our audience might not be able to sustain their focus or attention during the actual presentation. And so, we always need to consider the design or the layout of our PowerPoint slides. Another thing we need to remember is rehearsal. It is advised that a rehearsal be demonstrated prior to the presentation. It is to ensure familiarity with the presentation details. Consequently, the coordination of the presentation and equipment works alongside mastery and self-confidence. So that is why, as much as possible, when you are doing a physical presentation in front of a crowd of people, you should have your presenter with you to aid you in clicking the slides so that it could proceed to the next slide. Likewise, rehearsals help to improve audiovisual devices because glitches may be detected early. Also, rehearsals help the presenters visualize the impact of the presentation, thus giving them the idea of whether to retain or reconfigure some parts of the presentation. And of course, mind you, rehearsals are also very helpful in identifying your strengths and weaknesses in presenting your messages. Okay? Last thing that we need to consider is scrutiny. It is it is recommended to check the equipment and venue before the presentation. Ideally, if you have access to the venue ahead of time, then you could go to the venue so that you could check how large the venue is or the lighting of the venue. Okay? It comprises the position, outlet, and the manner of presentation. Addressing these concerns make the presentation smooth for the presenter and convenient for the listeners as well. Visual thrills, collaboration tools, easy access, and effective relay of information are indeed some of the advantages which a PowerPoint has to offer. So with this, speaking anxieties may be lessened because the presentation can divert the listener's attention from the speaker towards the screen. So it's very important that before you proceed to the presentation, you familiarize the place first, okay, or the platform for the presentation. You also check the equipment or the technology that you will be using if everything works conveniently for you, okay? Apart from the PowerPoint presentations that we can use in delivering our messages, we can also use web-based applications. We know that everything goes online nowadays, and most things that we can use to aid our relaying of messages or information towards people are readily available online. As a matter of fact, if you want to know the definition or the description of something, we easily check Google and information will be given to us readily. And so this has made our life more convenient and easier for us to disseminate information more effectively towards people. With the advent of technology, how do we supposed to respond? Should we always consider the boon of technology or should we consider its advantages as well? Do we prefer to be left behind or step forward? Web-based applications are proliferating nowadays. If you check online, there are a lot of web-based applications that we can use not only for educational, but also for professional purposes. And these web-based applications are deemed useful in terms of communication strategies. What does it mean? What is it really about? A web-based application, also known as web app, refers to any program which is retrieved over a network connection using HTTP. Some confusions are arising about application terms such as web-based, internet-based, and cloud-based. Web-based applications comprise all the applications that connect with the user via HTTP. So everything that you can search online is a form of web-based application. As a clarification, this technological tool consists of light applications only, such as we have the flash games, online calculators, calendars, and other readily available tools online. Besides, major applications such as word processors and spreadsheet applications are also the coverage of web-based applications. So, for example, we have the Microsoft Word, the Microsoft Excel, and the PowerPoint presentation. All of these are part of the web-based applications. All of these exist inside the web browser, yet these may be client-based where parts of the program are downloaded to a user's desktop, and so that's why we installed them. However, originally they are web-based, but it's just that we are given access to it because it's part of how the business works, okay? Then the processing is done over the internet on an external server. That's according to Technopedia in 2017. Specifically, we might be wondering what web-based applications can do. Well, these applications are a valuable tool in many fields such as education, the academic setting, business industry, and other organizations because they are highly capable of assisting in different forms and capacities. These may include tracking performance records, managing passenger cargo transportation, working with payroll or salaries, monitoring financial procedures, controlling employees' workflow, allowing booking accommodations, online processing payments, and so on. If you notice, online classes is one of the manifestations of these web-based applications. LMS, for an example, or the learning management system, the Blackboard or the online classrooms that we use are all forms of web-based applications that are made readily available for all of us. And these things have made our lives easier given the situation we are in right now. These complex tasks mentioned a while ago can be accomplished through programming languages and multiple technologies by a server. If you notice before, in order for you to book a room in a hotel, you have to go physically to a hotel and process your booking there. Or sometimes you can book on the day when you have to check in. However, now you can book ahead of time online. You can also do online shopping because of these web-based applications. Everything has been made online, and so life has become easier for all of us. A web-based application will run on the client computer's browser no matter what operating system is installed. This makes web-based apps a universal cross-platform solution available today. So in a nutshell, web-based applications are unique and updated, which can provide any institution or organization with various multifunctional online tools capable of solving complexities. But I should say one of the disadvantages of these web-based applications is that we are also diminishing the chances of many people getting jobs because of artificial intelligence, because of the advancement of technology. And instead of having someone processing the booking physically with the guests, we already have these web-based applications doing the work instead. Astoundingly, we may not be aware that majority of us are using or patronizing web-based applications in our daily lives. However, we always need to remember as well that technology for some may have disadvantages, but let's admit it, it has made our life more convenient. It has made everything accessible. It has made everything easier. And so we should be thankful that the presence of technology has been aiding us in improving our lives. Take our current situation as an example. Without technology, we would not be able to have online classes. We would not be able to have transactions, the usual transactions that we do physically in offices or companies. Thanks to technology, we now have virtual interactions which make communications and transactions easier and more convenient for everyone. So if you have questions, can you post them on the open forum? Thank you very much for listening.